Hello and welcome back to 4th Age Guides. Today we are taking a look at the battle prospects for the Principality of Far Harad. This is one of 3 Haradrian culture factions on the map. Far Harad, as we will see in the campaign guide video, which is forthcoming, is situated on the southern border, just south of the Empire of Harad. It's much larger and very aggressive neighbor. So if you choose to play as Far Harad, you will have a difficult early game, and it'll feel like a scramble all the way to the end, probably. So hopefully in this video, you'll get some tips and tricks on the units that you have at your disposal. We're going to start by looking at the Desert Guard here. We're going to play a custom battle, and then we'll dip quickly into the custom battle menu to look at a couple of other units that do not appear on this battlefield. So first up, your Bodyguard, Desert Guard, fantastic looking unit. Still, it's very similar to the Scarlet Shields that we will see deployed by the Empire of Harad. That is something like, I think, a tier 4 unit for them. But essentially, what that means is that your Bodyguard is like a unit that your major enemy can train. So that doesn't give you too much of an edge. However, these guys do have a fear effect. So they frighten the nearby enemy. That's either cavalry or infantry. They do have a combat bonus in deserts, which is going to play an important role in most, if not all, of your fights. Actually, I think all of your native troops have this combat bonus in the deserts. So this is a really good unit, superior in some ways to the Serpent Black, which is the Bodyguard of Harad, as we will see. These guys are a bit tougher, in my opinion. All the way down, though, on the infantry side of things, we have Desert Footmen. This is your tier 1, bottom of the rung infantry. At tier 1, this is your melee unit. They are going to be decent at garrison. At least they are cheap, but they're not anything special in particular. I brought a couple of units here, though, because you won't be able to get away with them, from them. In the early game, you are going to have several of these units already trained, and you will have the option in a couple of your cities to train nothing but these guys, at least if you want a melee dedicated unit. However, I'm going to make the argument for Southron Skirmishers as by far the better buy of the two for general purpose. So these are also a tier 1 unit. These also have the fear effect. So this only applies to enemy infantry, but it is still very useful as you will fight a lot of enemy infantry units. They have a combat bonus in the deserts, and their javelins are surprisingly effective, devastating even. So effective against armor, bonus versus riders, and large creatures. That counts Mumakil. Now in this battle you're going to see we're going to go up against some Mumakil. Hopefully we're going to do okay against them, and I will hopefully show you that these guys are definitely worth the buy. I brought 4 units here because in the early game they are so cost effective. You can train them everywhere. You can get a mercenary variant in your homelands as well, so you're going to have lots of these types of units, so you may as well get used to them. Now as you can tell, they've got very low armor, so that is going to be a problem in prolonged melee. But even in, let's say, cavalry fights, these guys do, again, surprisingly well. So you're definitely going to want to back them up with more dedicated melee troops, but as we'll see, dedicated melee is not your strength necessarily. At tier 2, if you want to move away from Desert Footmen, you're going to find Southron Spears. These are certainly an upgrade in terms of their stats. We can take a quick look at that for comparison. The attack of your Desert Footman is 10, charge bonus of 3, defense of 18. Whereas for these guys, it's up by at least a couple. So an attack of 12 and a defense of 24, which is a substantial upgrade. So as you go up the tiers, you're going to find better defense typically. These are the guys that are going to do somewhat of the holding of the line, although again, they're not going to stand up for very long. So the game for Far Harad is all about quick strikes, knowing where to engage, where to disengage, and using your missiles, and then using your cav to deal the killing blow. That's it for your spear dedicated infantry for the line holders. You do, however, have a very powerful unit, and I believe tier 2 as well. This is your Swords of Harad. So this is very similar to the version that Harad can train and Harandor can train. These guys, though, get a combat bonus in the deserts. They are going to benefit from the javelins that they have. So I think they have 2 of those, and they're going to throw them before the battle lines clash, as long as you have them set to fire at will. By default, they are typically set to not fire at will. I always like to turn fire at will on for these guys, though. Another melee unit for you is Southron Champions. So these guys are another interesting unit. Another fear-causing infantry unit, like the Southron skirmishers. Combat bonus in deserts, of course. May charge without orders. Powerful charge, good stamina. Note that their morale is not called out in particular, and you will notice that these guys do tend to rout. If they don't rout in this battle, I will be surprised, because I'm going 20 stack versus a 20 stack. I'll probably lose track of these guys. You want to keep them around for the fear effect, especially when you're fighting another Haradrian army, because all of your morale and the morale of the other Haradrian troops tends to be quite low. So fear units can be really force multipliers in these battles. But you can tell they are basically unprotected. They are going to die to missiles very easily, and they're not going to do too well if they are receiving a charge either. They can be easily wiped out by cavalry. So you have to be aware of them. This is not like the Berserkers of Rune, which you can basically hit the war cry on and let them sort of run off the map. You don't have to babysit them. These guys do take some more care. So my goal in this battle is to make sure that I don't lose track of them. Now let's move on to the other last infantry unit, but another ranged one. Very important for you, Red Sand Archers. So this is your only long-range unit. You don't get any other bow units in your armies. I brought 4 units of them. They're going to be extremely useful in the early years of your campaign and beyond, because again, they're going to get that desert bonus, which I think actually only applies to melee fighting, but given the way things tend to go, you may find yourself forced into melee with these guys. Still, obviously you want to keep them out of it, and you want to somewhat protect them with your other troops. So given the cost effectiveness, these are going to be excellent garrison troops, especially in a settlement where you have stone walls or the wooden walls, which will support troops. So definitely train tons of these guys. You can easily afford it. Now, in terms of setting up here, the game will often, this is the default setup that the game put for me. I'm noticing now that the game has decided the Southron champions should be out front. I am not going to do that. I'm going to keep them back here, kind of in the center, and move the swordsmen. Let's put them right about there. And let's move these guys back slightly. I don't know if that actually makes a difference, but a little less likely that they will receive a charge. So the goal will be to get these guys out and around potentially, or at least through my weaker front line, to lend some support to that as needed. In terms of cavalry, in addition to your bodyguard unit, you're going to get a couple of units that are quite good. First up, at tier 2, you will find Haradwaith Riders. These are fairly cost effective, quite light, very fast, large unit size. So 64 riders in a single unit. So these are quite good. Now, if you're like me, you might look at these and then think, okay, fine, but they've got such little armor. I'm just going to go straight on to the next tier, which I think is tier 3, for the Horsemen of Far Harad. These are certainly very effective troops. They've got a spear, which lends their charge more power. And they can be extremely devastating. But don't discount these guys. The difference in stats is surprisingly minimal. So the attack for the Haradwaith Riders is 13. Horsemen of Far Harad, also 13. Now, there's a more notable difference in the charge. Haradwaith Riders only get 12 as opposed to the 19 of the Horsemen of Far Harad. The defense, though, is only 1 point difference. So these guys have a defense of 19, Horsemen of Far Harad 20. Now, that 20 is made up of different elements, as you can tell. So it's more armor, and it's less parry or dodge. What that means is these guys, the Horsemen of Far Harad, are going to be more effective at withstanding arrows than these guys, the Haradwaith Riders, because parry dodge does not affect missile defense. So what I like to do to that end is set up a wing where I've got the Horsemen of Far Harad out front. They're going to be delivering the charge, and then I get my Haradwaith Riders to follow up immediately after them. So I'm using this as a single block of cavalry. That makes it a bit easier for me to micromanage it as well. And then I tend to leave my bodyguard kind of outside of that group, just to sort of push him wherever I need him. Now I am doing a custom battle here, and this is the Far Harad map, which you may know well. You've seen probably a couple of guide videos by me that do involve this map. So we do get the benefit of this very nice hill. You won't always get this, but I felt that we needed to show this. show this map. It just made sense. Now, what I'm actually considering doing is moving my spears more out to the flank and putting the swordsmen more in the center of the line. I'll keep the Southron spears in the flank, the swords of Harad will go in the middle, and we'll put some desert footmen on the flank as well. So the actual core is going to be swords of Harad, and we've got weaker spears sort of surrounded by the stronger spears, if that makes sense. I'm also keeping my skirmishers back. I'm going to keep them fire at will turned off. I'm going to keep skirmish turned off for them. I don't want them to waste their javelins on anything but the elephant. So as you can see, we've got Harad coming up the hill towards us. In terms of cavalry, they do outmatch me here. So they've got their bodyguard, which is, you will know from fighting the campaign, is a horse archer. This is one of the weaker bodyguard units, though, in the mod. They don't have a shield, and so you can typically shoot them down pretty well with your own archers. So that may be what I aim to do. Their cavalry, though, that I'm worried about is the Scarlet Shields here. Now, again, you can tell this is a very similar unit to my bodyguard, but it's more numerous. It causes fear, and so I'll have to focus on getting those guys cleared out. We also have some Haradwaith riders, and then some I think horsemen of the Harnan is what those are called. They also have some skirmishers, a few Corsair archers, some swords of Harad, some Corsairs of Umbar, and some footmen. So this is a typical motley group of Haradrian armies. We are going to get those skirmishers right over here, and hopefully, all right, let's see what we can do. They get the archers already shooting at them. They look like they might be retreating. Hopefully they're going to come back. Throwing some spears. Hit those Mumakil. There we go. There goes one. And they're amok. Alright, you know what? That's great. Because they're killing some of their Scarlet Shields. Okay, very, very good. I'm going to actually get out of here now. And I should have moved my cav while I was watching that. But that shows you how absolutely effective these skirmishers actually are. I'm going to put them back on fire at will and skirmish, and we're going to try to get out of here. Actually, no, you know what? We're fighting cavalry now, so I'm going to send my other guys to take care of that. Alright, let's maybe we'll kill this guy. Alright, Corsairs of Umbar, we can charge them. Alright, not looking good. Took out a bunch of my guys, but he's running away. Okay, so now we're going to throw everybody in. Okay, Footmen of Harad, not going to be a problem. I'll send my own footmen after them. Alright, now we can clean up the missile troops, I believe. We're in a pretty decent position to do that. I do have to watch for my general, because now he's getting into the fight a bit. We'll be able to take out these Scarlet Shields pretty easily, and we're going to run everybody forward. Okay. Some Mumakil in the back. I think we're not too worried about that. If we can get everybody else taken care of, then those guys will just cease to be a problem. So we're going to run up the skirmishers. We want to keep the pressure up while people are routing. Take out the red sand archers. Maybe catch the enemy general. Not sure if we're going to be able to do that. He is an archer general, so he may try to flee, but with the numbers of the cavalry here, I think we're not going to have a problem with this. I've got, what is it? I've got 3 cav units here, so 2 of the Haradwaith riders, 1 of the horsemen of Far Harad, and general is already down to 11 men, 10 men, losing heavily. All right. Very good. So we're just going to end the battle here. So heroic victory. So 1,520 men deployed, 1,284 survivors, and pretty straightforward. Let's take a look at the stats. Nobody routed, surprisingly. The Southron champions did better than expected. Let's take a look at the kills. So not too many kills for them. I think I had them chasing Cav early on, so they probably just couldn't catch up. Swords of Harad got 180 kills, probably just from throwing those javelins and chasing down routers. 154 kills from the Red Sand Archers, 115 from another unit. So very, very effective ranged troops. Southern skirmishers did quite well. They of course got caught by the Cav there, but that's the thing. You do kind of have to use them in a bit more of an aggressive manner when you're hunting Mumakil. They're absolutely going to shred those Mumakil. The other one certainly would have gone down shortly thereafter if I'd kept them focused on him, but I was content to let him sort of rampage through the ranks. So very a very fun faction to play, actually. Let's take a look at some of the other units that they get. And I'm just going to go to, yes, Far Harad. So this is not much more than what you just saw in the battlefield. Again, they're going to have a very surprisingly powerful selection of ranged troops, a good, very workmanlike selection of cavalry, and some basic infantry. With some surprises here in these Southern champions. But beyond that, in terms of other units they can train, it's fairly limited. This is one of the smaller rosters in the mod, which is totally not a problem for me. I love factions with kind of interesting and focused rosters like this. But you do have some options as you expand, so we'll talk quickly about these, and of course more discussion will be forthcoming in that campaign guide video. So if you were to expand into different regions like Rune, Nirn, Umbar, you would be able to train some of these vassal units, or the Retainer Spearmen. This unit here, the Retainer Spearmen, is the one you are likely to see soonest of those three. And that's, of course, because Umbar is close to where you began, relatively speaking, and you are going to be fighting west because you will want to essentially kill the Empire of Harad. That's not necessarily in your victory conditions, but they're going to be your first enemy. It's almost certain you're going to be at war with them. You may as well go to the sea and make that very wealthy land your own. When you get there, one of your rewards is going to be the ability to train Retainer Spearmen. And what this does is it effectively adds like a third level of spear, defensive-oriented infantry to your line. As we saw, the Desert Footmen are pretty weak. Southern Spears are a step above, but nothing necessarily to write home about. These guys are going to be much more dependable, smaller unit size, but certainly notably higher defense, slightly better attack and charge, and they're going to also have the reasonable morale, which is going to allow them to stand for longer in the fight, even as they begin to take losses, which will happen at a slower rate. So these are definitely worth taking, very much in theme for your faction as well. In Rune, if you were to go, let's see, north and east of your starting position, you will get Vassal Axemen. Now, this is a unit that is essentially a Tier 2 unit for the Easterlings, so it may not seem super special. However, they do add a bit of offensiveness to your line. Of course, you do have Southron champions, but these are like, you want to have one unit in an army. You don't really want to fill up your front line with Southron champions. They're going to be used for very specific purposes, and of course they have great vulnerabilities. Your Swords of Harad are extremely effective units, but let's see, their attack is 4. The attack is 5 for the Vassal Axemen at let's see, no experience. But let's get the experience up to what it probably would be. So that's 11. And if we go with the weapon upgrades, attack of 14 versus attack of 13. This attack of 14, though, is going to shoot up to 24 for 30 seconds after you hit that Warcry button. So it is worth considering training a few of these guys if you're invading Rune anyway. Your victory conditions do not necessarily point you up in that far. You do have to take on Khand, which is kind of in that area. So if you go further, these will be kind of a nice a bonus, really. Not something that you necessarily want to aim for in your conquest. But another one that you may well want is Vassal Macemen. And these guys are available in the Nirn region, so the Sea of Nirn in eastern Mordor. That's not too terribly far from where you began the game, and it's not too far from one of your victory conditions either, which is the capital of Khand. So if you were to head up there and sort of move to the northwest from that, you could get some very wealthy territory and vassal macement. So I do recommend these guys. These are armor piercing, which you somewhat lack apart from your skirmish units, these Southron skirmishers. So notice that your Southron champions are not effective against armor. They have huge weapons, but they're more for cutting than puncturing, I guess. The macemen, though, are effective against armor. They are quite expensive, but they have good morale, and they are very, very defensively oriented. So let's give them, let's see, some upgrades and see what that defense looks like. It's 33. That's notably higher than your Swords of Harad. So this is worth it. They can also do the shield wall move, which is also effective in a couple of other ways. So again, a very defensive unit that can absolutely hold a line, but can also dish out some good damage, especially against heavily armored troops. So if you do find yourself fighting with the Reunited Kingdom, if you're playing, say, a very long campaign as Far Harad, you may want to go for these guys. And the big one, Mumakil. So in early versions of the mod, Far Harad could not train these guys at all. But I really love that we changed this in one of the later versions. It may have been the most recent patch, 3.4, or it may have been the one before it. I can't remember. But what changed was, if you, as Far Harad, conquer a Haradrian settlement that allows the training of Mumakil, you can make use of that building for yourself. You can't build it yourself, but if you find that Harad has already built a Mumakil training grounds, you can take it and train these guys. In the campaign video, we'll talk about where that settlement is. It's essentially northwest of your starting position. I think Akas Anaban is the name of it. But you'll get more details on that in the campaign video. But of course, Mumakil are excellent. They're a lot of fun to use, and it certainly does go well with the kind of style of a hit and run or smash and run for Far Harad. So definitely recommend it. Well, I hope this has been useful to you. And again, we are going to look more at the campaign side of things in an upcoming video. Far Harad, again, is something of a quirky faction, a small roster, but it does a few things very well, and it is extremely satisfying to pull off victories against a technically superior force with some of your cheaper desert troops. So, hope you'll join me in the next one. Until then, take care, everybody. Bye-bye.